Welcome to today's episode of The Heart of the Matter, which is entitled Not Forgotten. Yes, not forgotten. We're talking about internally displaced persons, IDPs, in northern Nigeria. We did an episode on this a few months ago, and we've come back again to talk about what we're seeing. The International Organization of Migration statistics indicate that 2,152,000 IDPs were in Nigeria as at the end of December 2015. That figure has probably grown a little bit more, but there's about 200,000 to 300,000 people out in camps while the rest are out in communities. Now, a team from Guiding Light Assembly, our church, made a visit to the Malkohi community in Adamawa State. This episode talks about the experience whilst out there. The situation is one that requires constant attention all the time. But look, stay tuned and watch the story. We'll be right back.
These things sometimes are psychological.
I said the financial cost as one of the many
was enormous.
It was a God experience. I just wanted to find God. Simply feeling like you're inspired isn't always so.
Tell us about the solution.
As one
People
of
with
many
18 to 35 years of age out of work.
Hey, I don't have the skill for this particular problem to solve this particular problem.
None of us talked about the bread seller.
So welcome back again to today's episode of Heart of the Matter. We're talking about the situation involving internally displaced people in various camps around Nigeria. Neri, we have you, Neri Teriba, you're our special guest today. And very interestingly, as part of the Guiding Light Assembly team, you made a visit to the Malkohi community in Adamawa State. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay, so welcome. And you're going to share with us your experiences. I mean, the impression I have from a previous program that we did about IDPs, it's a very difficult story. I mean, what was the impact on you, the first impression you had when you got to the Malkohi community camp?
My first impression actually was a lot better because when I started working with IDPs, this is about 2.5 years ago, it was very devastating. It was very rocky.
Yes.
I was crying a lot. I was very emotional. But getting to the Malkohi camp, I felt a lot better. Okay. I think what helped is because it was a settlement camp, so they were actually a community. And at least being welcomed by children, you know, running around, being children, still looking like children, acting like children, being joyful. It really had a way of bringing you more peace in the middle of things that were wrong. So that's what I would say. So it brought some calmness to the situation. But that aside, yes, they're in the middle of a lot of need. It's encouraging. The good things are, because it's a settlement community, they know themselves. It's fairly clean. It's very clean. It's very organized. They know themselves. The women look after their neighbors' children. But
it's still surrounded by tragedy. But
there
before we go into the depth of that story, I just want to step back a little bit. My understanding is that there in Malkohi, there are different camps. There is I think there's a federal or a NEMA camp, which is a formal camp.
Yes.
And then this one, which is an unofficial camp.
Yeah.
Apparently the land donated by the community when the federal camp just basically became too full.
Yeah.
So is that, I mean, tell us how the informal camp differs from the formal camp.
Okay. So the good thing is, so NEMA has camps that are the formal NEMA camps. They are run by NEMA. NEMA feeds them every day. And what you can almost imagine a humanitarian camp run by an aid agency to look like, very structured. Then there's settlement camps, like you said, where they settle in host communities. Now, those camps are still registered under NEMA. So NEMA oversees them to a large extent. NEMA still gives them food once every month or two. They sort of liaise with NEMA on issues. NEMA tries to keep track of, you know, who they are, what's going on. So this is a settlement camp. Now, there are also informal camps. And now, informal camps, NEMA has no knowledge. I shouldn't say no knowledge, no
oversight over them.
No oversight, no relationship with. And you will find informal camps in many places. Like, for instance, there's camps all over Abuja, but they're informal because the federal government, NEMA, has not approved or sanctioned any camps to be in Abuja. There are also informal camps as well in Lagos. So this camp is a settlement camp, meaning it's in the host community, like you said, that gave them a piece of land to say, for now, you can stay
So
here.
there are basically three types of camps then.
Exactly.
The formal camps under NEMA. There are these settlement camps with oversight from NEMA, but it seems with a bit more self-regulation on
Exactly.
them. And then the completely informal ones where people just migrate and they just set up shop.
Exactly. And why that's important is because oftentimes you may hear people in the news talking about IDPs and
Yes.
camps and situations and how things are so horrible, and even seeming like the government doesn't care. Sometimes it may just be an informal camp that the government has no relationship with, and you begin to get the impression that, but we thought the government was doing something. I don't know if that makes sense. So sometimes it's always important to understand what kind of camp are we talking about, where is the camp, and of course, if the camp is not in the northeast, then it's not going to be sanctioned by the government.
By the government.
Yes.
Okay. We'll probably come back to that a bit later on. But
Okay.
I want to come back again to your earlier commentary about the kids running around, kids being kids, exuberant. I mean, did that, in a way, how I say, cause your senses to just scream upside down? Because you'd think in a place like the settlement camps, where they've come about by tragedy, Boko Haram, that everything would be sort of melancholy. And I mean, did that really surprise you?
Well, yes and no. Because for me, with children, that's one of the good signs. Whenever I've been to places that may be hard or difficult, when the children are playing, there's hope.
Yeah.
So that's why, for me, I look at that as a good sign. It shows you that, well, there's hope. The parents have managed to sort of, how do you say this, at least not take out such abuse or whatever is going on. The trauma hasn't fully been transferred to the children, and that's hopeful.
Okay.
So that's why, for me, seeing that at least brings some peace to you to say, okay, there's hope in this situation. But like I said, that aside, some things that were sad about the children, though, is you could tell, like there was a lady that was with us in our team, and she could tell there's a way a child, especially when they're babies, and you think sometimes babies don't know, there's a way a baby would hold you, and you knew that the baby had lost their mother. And just because for some strange reason, the baby would just hold you clinging and wouldn't let go. But if there are other babies that, you know, their moms were there, they wouldn't really cling to you. So there was that sense of, and you look and you think, wow, this baby understands that they're alone. Some people wanted to, I guess they wanted to feel more human and more in control of their lives, because being in those government-run camps, you wake up, they give you food. You have nothing to do. And I think these people felt we need to get our dignity back. We'd rather build our own community, try and find work. And so you could see that in the men. The men, a lot of the men they were finding work, people there working as, you know, so one of them was a bricklayer. He would find work from time to time, you know, working as farm hands. So that was good. There was resilience.
And you used the word dignity. I mean, I recall from the previous program that we did about IDPs here on the Heart of the Matter, the word dignity kept coming up over and over again, that in terms of rehabilitating people that had found themselves displaced and entered the camps, that sense of dignity was a critical part in that rehabilitation and healing process. So clearly something is going on where people are actually voluntarily, I assume, leaving the formal camps where they're fed to the camps where they're saying, help us, and then let's go learn how to fish ourselves.
Exactly.
Is that what you're basically saying?
Exactly.
All right. Now, let's not forget, though, that we're dealing also with the product of a security issue. This is about Boko Haram. Boko Haram, a very fierce terrorist group that has ravaged the northeastern part of this country for 6 years or so. Now, albeit that at the moment it appears that the government, the military have had a handle on this. But in going into that area, I mean, did you get a sense of the security threats? Did you see anything that made you concerned?
Not in this part of Adamawa, not in this part of Malkohi. It felt very peaceful, very secure. This camp was actually, I'm not really, my measurement of distance is poor. Maybe half a kilometer away from an army barracks.
Okay.
So in going to the camp, you have to go through the gate of the army barracks. So they're surrounded by the military. So that obviously adds a level of safety. But even when we're trying to travel to go see other camps, every few miles, you would come across checkpoint after checkpoint after checkpoint. So very clearly you could see that the place is secure. There's lots of aid agencies around in their cars.
International aid agencies.
International aid agencies. So seeing them around as well and they felt safe, they looked safe, they went around in the security convoy.
Yes.
That also just established as well that, well, even they feel safe
Yes.
in that
And of course,
area.
I mean, the trip you made is fairly recent. It was a couple of months ago, if I recall.
Yeah.
And this, I guess, is within that time zone where the military has managed to get a real grip on, I guess, routing Boko Haram. So
Yeah.
that creates that more, I guess, convivial atmosphere in which you can do this kind of work.
Some, but even when we went on our first reconnaissance trip a few months ago, I mean, see, now the Malkohi camp is around Yola. So Yola never, how would I say, Yola never was a city that was under much threat from Boko Haram. Yola is a lot more south in Adamawa.
Okay.
So that also helped. So I think that's why a lot of the camps felt, and the aid agencies felt secure with having these camps around Yola, you know, southern part of Adamawa. So I think that also added some level of security
Some level
as
of
well.
security. Now, that's really awesome. Now, in terms of the size of this camp, was it a large camp?
No, this camp is about 2,000 people.
Okay.
Yes.
But I mean, 2,000 people in, I don't know, a hectare of land, I don't know, an acre of
This is a
land.
good one. Oh, how much?
But did it feel cramped to you visually?
No.
Okay, well spaced out.
Yes, it's
Okay.
they actually had organized. I'm sure the footage you have captured, organized. You could see they'd made streets, they'd made paths. You know, I could just imagine them even describing how to get to someone's house.
Okay.
So very clean, enough space, and well planned.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what sort of facilities do they actually have there in the camp?
So what they have, they now have 3 boreholes. They have, how would I say, the USAID and in conjunction with a few other organizations had created them a safe house. So there's a safe house. There was a mini hall, I would say, or a meeting place that was being constructed as well. Aside from that, everything else were houses made from sticks and tarpaulin for the roofing.
Okay.
So that's
Well,
what it
Mary,
looks
what
like.
we're going to do, we're going to take a break now.
Okay.
And then when we come back, we're going to talk even some more about the camps. And we're going to want to know why Malkohi, why
Yes.
not somewhere else?
Okay.
Well, audience, I hope you're finding this fascinating, just learning about what's happening in an IDP camp in Nigeria. And we'll be right back to talk more about this, so do stay tuned. Thank you. Welcome back to the Heart of the Matter, where today we're talking about the situation of internally displaced people, IDPs, in the northern part of Nigeria, specifically Malkohi community in Adamawa State. Now, with us, we have our special guest, Nere. Nere, before we went on a break, we were talking about your experiences in visiting Malkohi. Now, we know that from information from the International Organization of Migration, there's something like about 2.2 million people who are IDPs today in Nigeria. And I think there's something like about 300,000, maybe between 200,000 and 300,000 that are in camps. Malkohi is a small community of just 2,000 people. And here's the question. Of all of that out there, why Malkohi and not somewhere else?
That's a good question. So, you know, I told you about the different camps, the formal
Yes.
camps, the settlement camps, informal camps.
Yeah.
We knew that we wanted to be associated with a camp that was under the umbrella of NEMA,
Yes.
just for accountability purposes and everything. So if we were going to be in a camp that was under NEMA's umbrella, it had to be in the Northeast.
Okay.
So we said, all right, let's start with Adamawa, that's as south as it gets. So we went to Adamawa Yola. So NEMA was going to take us to show us a few camps. But before that, through a connection in the team, someone said, I want you to meet this friend of mine. She works for UNHCR. So this lady had said, oh, please come to this camp. I want to take you to this camp, the Malkohi camp. You know, she was going there to deliver all these things. And she was really maybe pushing or lobbying, I should say, for this camp. And we're like, okay, well, no problem. We'll check this out later. We're waiting for NEMA to take us around. And, you know, NEMA would take us first to the Malkohi camp. And as soon as we got there, and like I said, our hearts just pulled to Malkohi. We got there, it was just the children around, and we said, this is the camp. So that really was how it happened. There was no coin flipping. It seemed almost like chance, but we think God led us there.
Well, that's the most important thing.
Yes.
Man plans, but God guides his steps.
Exactly.
So when you got to the camp, tell us what you did. I mean, how long were you visiting that camp? How many days was that?
The initial visit, it was just a day. I wouldn't even. It was about 4 hours actually.
Okay.
So about 4 hours, we were there. We just watched. A lot of observation, and then we talked with the leaders, the woman leader, the man leader, the young people, just asking questions. What do you need? Looking around. So we observed then a lot of children running around barefoot. What did we observe? There were some houses being built, but no tarpaulin. There were some houses that had no, how do you say, no waterproof ceilings, I should say. So we saw that, and yeah, that was it. So we made our observations, we talked to them, and we understood that, well, they needed food, they needed covering for roofing, they needed some things for their clinic. So yeah, that was what happened.
Did they prioritize though? Did they tell you we need this item more than the other item?
You know, at that time, no. And that's what's interesting. I think they got bolder, or maybe bolder is not that, they got more open when we actually went with things. It was almost like the first time they didn't really know what to expect. And to even segue, it was interesting because the second time when we went, there will actually be a man who would approach us. And he was approaching us actually begging for money, saying he didn't have work, whatever. And they got very angry at him. It was very interesting. All the men got very angry at him and they said, why are you asking them for money? They're like, why are you disturbing these people? They've come just to help us. Why would you come? And so that going back to our first visit, it made sense. They seem to have this approach where they don't want to beg. They're very careful. They're open. So
it's a dignity point again.
Exactly, back to dignity. So the first time I went there, they said, well, we're here. They didn't want to tell you too much about their problems, but it was more like, well, we're here. We need anything you can give us, we need. So we had to spend more of our own time observing. So that's what I'll say to that.
So what kind of things did you take then?
So when we went back, so we definitely observed that for a number of people there, 2 boreholes were not enough. So we got a borehole built on the other end of the camp. We took food. We took medicines. Mostly for the medicines, a lot of anti-diarrhea, anti-malaria, tarpaulin for the roofs. What else did we take? Yeah, those were the main categories. But yeah, lots of food.
And so while you were in the camp, I mean, did you get to observe, for example, the conditions or quality of sanitation?
Yes.
The clinic, for example, there is a clinic.
There is a clinic.
What was that like? Was it well stocked? Did they have, I don't know, a doctor there, a nurse? Tell us about that.
Well, so there is a doctor on staff. There's a resident doctor. There is a nurse technician. So there's assistants, but clearly not enough for the site. Because you have to remember, when we're talking about the Malkohi camp, this is the IDP camp. There's actually a community there that's Malkohi, and they are not IDPs. So this clinic originally was serving that small community. So the clinic is really, really stretched. The school as well is stretched. There's a little school there as well, very stretched. You should see all the children just cramped in the classrooms. So the clinic is very stretched. I think the right word to use would be that they're overwhelmed.
Okay. And in the clinic, I mean, what sort of ailments did you discover, if at all, people were suffering from whilst in the camp?
What do you think? Malaria, they come along with malaria, diarrhea, fever, lots of eye infections, eye problems. So that was it. That's what was mostly the common. I remember talking to the doctor, and she did say that some people just always complain about headaches. And they can't quite diagnose. I mean, they don't have, they don't have fancy diagnostic machines. So some people, if you just come with a headache, they'll just give you, just take Panadol. So yeah, but some people, what I did wonder after a while is sometimes some of these issues may be just connected to malnutrition. Some of these issues may be connected to stress, trauma, anxiety. So yeah, so there are probably those issues that are hard to really diagnose.
I think before we started recording the program, you told me something about an experience, a lady with a child in the clinic.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
It was a very sad situation. So we got there and we brought all the medication. And so we let everybody know, and the doctor who took everything, this is free. This is for everyone. no one will pay for this and all that. We're not really sure if that was maybe what encouraged this woman to bring her child. Maybe she had been afraid that she didn't have any money to pay for medication. But anyway, she would bring her child there who was very sick. So what I'm not sure of is how long this had been going on. If the child had been sick for days or very suddenly. Anyway, so the child will come, will be brought in, look like very weak, almost maybe fainting. And then they will be given an injection. They will seem to, okay, wake up, come to, and within a few minutes the child dies. And it was one of those things that, well, we'll later find out that we assume this was a doctor. We'll find out that this was not a doctor. It was a technician. It was just one of those things that just broke your heart on so many levels because not making accusations because we don't understand the history. How was this something that could have been prevented? But either way, realizing that clearly the fact that aid came spurred this woman to think, let me bring my child. Now it's free. But so letting you know that, like I was saying, even in the midst of, even with the dignity, they suffer a lot in silence.
I mean, that's really, really hard. And I guess that's part of the tragedy that's going on in that part of the country. And, you know, it's very hard to criticize if people are giving aid and then things happen. I mean, all I know is that God knows best. But when you think about that story or other things that you observed in the camp, are there things you think that could be done differently? In fact, what do the people themselves tell you? I mean, did they give you a message for the world? And if so, what was it?
So I was surprised when I was asking, I said, because I had looked around and I had made some observations, like I noticed that their toilets and the bathrooms could do with a lot of rehabilitation. So, and people have pointed that out. So when I asked the leaders, I said, okay, could we help you with the toilets? Could we help you with it? They said, no, those are functional. Those are not important. I said, so what's important to you? They said, food. And like I said, for the first time, they were a lot more open. They said, like, for instance, we haven't eaten in 3 days. They said, you know, when we find work, we get paid 400, 500 naira a day. They're like, but that can buy food. So they said, you know what, food. And I said, okay, well, what kind of food? And they were more particular. They wanted food that was more versatile for the family, like corn, maize, cereal. Because they said, and they explained this, they said, if you give us corn, the babies can eat it, the children can eat it, we'll grind it as tuwo, you can plant it, this will make, and I thought, wow. So it really showed you their, like I was saying, their level, they were very practical. And I said, oh, how about beans? Like beans, wow, beans would be nice, but beans is so expensive. I mean, this is the way these people...
So they were considerate.
I was amazed.
Straight.
Need. Yeah, I said beans, beans is too expensive. They like things like corn, things like cereal, you know. And so that was it. He just really zeroed in on food. And even when we talked about, like I said, even with the seed to help them plant, he did like this. He said, well, that would be helpful. But the reason why food is more helpful to them is because they don't have their land. They're like, if we don't have land
you can't cultivate.
To plant, we can't really cultivate. So, like I said, they were very practical, and they said the first thing for them is, they said, good food. If we have good food, we're happy. So that was their primary.
So more help is needed now. What can other people do? I mean, Guiding Light Assembly, our church, is doing something already, and that's part of the mission on which you went. But this is not for only Guiding Light Assembly, and we know that there are many others who are doing things. But if people want to join, how can they do that? Whether it's a Guiding Light Assembly effort or some other effort, what would you recommend that people do?
Well, what I would recommend is if it's people that are connected to Guiding Light, they can always reach out to the team. But otherwise, if people are outside and you say, you know, this touches my heart, I want to give. The Malkohi camp is about 30 minutes outside Yola. If you get there, you just ask for Malkohi. So you can go there directly. You can give to them. Like I said, they are not pushy. They're very
amazingly
easy.
They're quite considerate.
Not very considerate.
Awesome. It's really awesome. So moving away from that, I'm going to make it a bit personal for you because I know this is emotional. I know you've been touched. You've visited before. You've gone back again, and it wouldn't surprise me if you're still planning to go back yet again. But what did you learn about yourself from this experience?
I think what I would say I really learned about myself. I really learned that I really do not like division. I don't like division. Especially for me, I think need is need. It's need is need, your faith is your faith, what you believe, but we're all human and everyone needs assistance. So I think I would really find out that myself, I really had no, I mean, maybe compassion for need, but I found that I had no, what's the word? Definitely I will find out that my emotions are stirred when I find that in the middle of trauma and need, there's still so many dividing lines.
Because you've
and
used
walls.
that word division, you're talking
Yes.
about dividing lines. What did you see that makes you keep going back to that? It's like something happened.
Yeah.
What happened?
Well, I think the summary of what I would say happened was we found out that there were faith lines
Okay.
that divided people. For instance, the Malkohi camp at first, like I told you, this was a community. Back when they were in Goza, when they came from, multi-faith, they all lived in the same community. Sure, your neighbor may have been more of the same faith as you, but you were all one community.
Yes.
But somehow, now that they're here, and by the time, there was food or lack, those lines came. And it brought such division that people of one faith left and went to go create their own camp. And then you could even see this sense of entitlement and anger coming up when they hear that this church group came to this, to this faith, but they should have come to our faith as well, our faith camp. And so seeing that was very, on one hand, it was very heartbreaking. But on the other hand, what really, the redemption in this, I should say, was also seeing how unity could still coexist. Because what ended up happening is a church came to this group, and this group, it didn't matter to them. They were not asking if you're a church or not. For them, it's like you cared, you came, we're happy, we bless you, we receive you. And it was a genuine moment of receiving each other. And that was encouraging, saying that, look, it doesn't matter what your faith is. No one was asking who was who, and we just, welcomed each other.
And when I hear that story, it makes me wonder, whether this is part of the psychological trauma, or if you call it, what people need to do to survive. Because in the midst of hunger, you told a story, people not having eaten for 3 days, and all of a sudden sustenance comes, and people will fight just to ensure that they survive. I mean, could that have had anything to do with it? Probably.
But like we're saying, this division started, and like, in fairness to them, there's always roots to everything.
Yes.
From what I understand, this division did not just happen. It started, it's at least a year.
Yes.
But what's interesting is you separated yourself from them. There's no relationship. But when food came, you came back.
Yeah.
And you could still see that the wounds had not healed. And the whole thing, erupting again.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, I guess we have to pray that these sorts of situations don't occur. I mean, in the first place, that we don't get to a situation where terrorism can ever rear its head again like this in Nigeria.
Yeah.
Because I would say that probably is the root of the whole problem. And then even in the camps where people are struggling to survive, that creates this division.
Yes.
But notwithstanding, one of the things I find quite powerful is, as you said, that sense of dignity and people wanting to look after themselves.
Yes.
So I commend the efforts that you've made personally, as well as the efforts of the entire Guiding Light team that was on this, and long may you continue to do that. On your next trip, obviously look after yourself, and hopefully you can help bring other people along with you on that journey.
Yes, we will.
Well, audience, I found it a very touching story today, because when you talk about the suffering of anybody of any kind anywhere in the world, all the more here in Nigeria where we live, it really brings home to you that it's not just the situation that we're seeing. There's a saying here in Nigeria that when you trip and fall, don't look at where you fell, but go back to where you tripped first before you fell. And where we tripped up is whatever societal situations that led to Boko Haram need to be tackled quite aggressively. The government has been dealing with the military side, but we hope that the other conditions that led to insurgency will be totally eradicated from our society. Look, all good things come to an end, but just like the story of the Good Samaritan, as Christ said, go forth and do likewise. Whatever you can do to help the IDPs, please do your bit. So until next time, stay blessed.